Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is our last preview episode of rewatching Georgia's big games from this season. And Tony, I think my big takeaway is Georgia looks a lot better in Atlanta than they do in Lexington, Kentucky, or Columbia, Missouri. It looks very much like a very different team when they're playing at home or in the state of Georgia against good opposition than they do on the road against less good opposition.
No, you're absolutely right. And when you're playing in a dome, obviously the 13 mile per hour sustained winds cannot get to you, and the 30-degree wind chill factor cannot get to you. So you are safe from the crazy and outrageous elements that they faced in Lexington. And so, no, I actually did hear from somebody, they were like, it was like 13-degree wind chills. Leave us alone. So it's like, okay, that is cold. I will admit that is cold. Dealing with it now here right now in Ohio. Okay. I appreciate what you're saying. But yeah, welcome to the final Georgia rewatch. And this is a rewatch because I think we both watched this game live. And I had forgotten some of the crazy stuff that we saw in this one. And so, as always, we just go back and forth, sharing like 5 things that caught our eye and then more things after that. But Tom, I'll give you honors here if you'd like to go first.
All right. And I will say I did not rewatch this. I took my son up to the MAC championship game in Detroit on championship Saturday and watched the Ohio Bobcats almost win and then not win the MAC championship yet again, 1968. It's been a minute. Anyway, yes. So I listened to this on the phone on the way home. I just pulled up the Varsity Network app. And then at one point that dropped out and I had to call you and say, okay, wait a minute. Georgia just had the ball and was right down by like about ready to score on the opening drive. And then all of a sudden they're down 7-0. What the heck happened? And you trying to explain that to me over the phone was a lot of fun. But man, I think my big takeaway on this is you can't make mistakes against Georgia. Like LSU actually played a fairly clean game. I don't think they had any false starts. But it's that one brain fart. It's, Ohio State had one on special teams against Michigan, and it maybe cost them, at least cost them a chance to keep the game closer and may have cost them the game, depending on how you want to say that play plays out. But LSU goes right down the field, looks really good in the opening drive, get down in the field goal range, kick a field goal, it's blocked. Their players all start walking off the field. No, guess what? Georgia has players that are pretty well coached, and Georgia has players that are going to. And not, to be fair, there were Georgia players walking off the field too. Georgia has at least one extremely well coached player who picked the ball up and ran it back for a touchdown because the ball was still a live ball. And it was one of those things where the officials are all standing around and, hey, did anyone hear a whistle? No. Okay, well, ball's still live, and picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown. That it's almost not fair where Georgia has size and speed and talent and such good athletes and athletes to take advantage of, hey, this weird play happened where the ball bounced off a receiver's helmet and you've got, freakish athletes who are there on the spot, paying attention, tipping the ball. It was like a volleyball setup almost. And, ball hits the receiver's helmet off of one of the Georgia defensive backs to another Georgia defensive back for an interception. They're so well coached and they're so disciplined that it was, it almost feels unfair watching them play a team like LSU, which was, pretty good, but not incredible. LSU was kind of like, I don't know, Penn State good this year, maybe something like that. And just, LSU feels like they're kind of in the game. They might have even had more total yardage at one point than Georgia did. And they're still down 21-7 because Georgia just makes all of the plays.
Yeah, and they got a bunch of bounces, including one where Kenny McIntosh fumbles and then picks it up himself, like barely gets the ball touched by a defender and just picks it up and keeps going. And like you said, you make a mistake and then they kill you for it. The interception that goes off of some hands, bounces off of a helmet, and then bounces off some more hands and gets intercepted. The next play was a touchdown pass to Ladd McConkey. Like they went right for it. And so they take advantage of these mistakes. And in another world, or if you play this game a couple of times, there's a scenario where LSU is up 14-0 in this game. If they punch it in on that drive, because they went down the field the next drive and scored. Now, granted, Georgia didn't get the opportunity to have the ball between those two things, but LSU went right down the field twice. And even doing that, not being able to capitalize, later on the score is 35-7 in the second quarter. Like what could have been 14-0 or 14-7 is 35-7 Georgia. And you just have like LSU's like, we're in this, we're doing well. And then you look up, it's like, well, but it's 35-7. So how well are you doing? And they made some mistakes, and Georgia, man, made them pay for it. Like pushed their face into the ground and took their money, and then took their lunch and took their shoes. And then you got poor Brian Kelly there with no shoes on. But it was another impressive game. But also through this impressive stuff, you're seeing these things where Ohio State can do that. Ohio State can throw that ball. Ohio State can do this. And that's the weird thing about this, where we keep saying like Georgia is not impossible to beat. They're undefeated, but you see all of these little flaws, but they're only there for a little bit. And you have to continue, like to expose it once may not be enough. You've got to expose it twice in a drive. And that's where it may get more difficult for you.
Yeah, it reminds me, have you seen the like real life the floor is lava room, where the floor is like video screens and you have to like hop from one to another, and it's like you can absolutely survive this. There are people surviving this right here. But you have to not miss. You have to go, you have to be right on it. You have to take advantage of every opportunity. Like Georgia is the floor is lava as a football team. That first half was just an avalanche. They had that 3-and-out to open the first half. Then they get the field goal return for a touchdown. After LSU scores, they go 7 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. Then they had a turnover, one play, like you said, shot right in the end zone, boom, one play touchdown. Then they had 9 plays, 58 yards, missed a field goal, doinked a field goal. That was their big failure in the first half. They missed a field goal by doinking it off the upright. And then 13 plays, 76 yards, touchdown, 5 plays, 58 yards, touchdown. And all of a sudden, bing, bang, boom, it's 35-7. You're trailing right before the half. And, you look at that, and it reminded me so much of the last time we saw Georgia play in that stadium, where it's just the conditions are perfect. Stetson Bennett is just kind of like laying the ball in there. He had 4 touchdown passes in the first half of this game. He only threw, I think, 1 in the first half against Oregon, but it was just, they were, just right down the field, just ball right on the money. And in that one, it was 28-3 at the half. And it just, so that's what? Let's see, I can do math. 63-10 was the combined score, and that was right before LSU kicked a field goal right before half. So it's okay, we'll make it 63-13. So, okay, now I'm sure you're feeling better about how Georgia plays in that stadium. So, sure, yep. Let's get people off the roof right now and say, we've now watched enough of these that I'm like pausing the game, I'm typing out a note, and then I hit unpause, and then Gary Danielson saying the same thing I just wrote. I was like, okay, good. Well, I must be onto something here. We have talked all year about how great their tackling has been, and then the Keyshawn Butte touchdown. There were at least 3 and maybe 4 different Georgia guys who got a hand on him and couldn't bring him down. And Kentucky doesn't have receivers that elusive. Missouri doesn't have receivers that elusive. Ohio State might have receivers that elusive. So there was stuff there. And then after Jaden Daniels got hurt, they bring in the backup, and Nussmeier was just throwing bombs downfield. And it feels like I'm watching the Nussmeier drives and going, this is what Ohio State needs to do. Ohio State needs to take those shots downfield. And I don't know if they're going to be willing to do it. They keep talking as if they're going to be willing to do it. But to me, he hit a nice shot. He's thrown into coverage or double coverage at times, and it's like you have to take your chances. You have to trust your receivers to go make a play. There was one to Neighbors who was going. It was like Malachi Stikes and Keely Ringo were both down there. Really nice throw for a touchdown, and then he hit another long one where there were the same 2 guys. That was just sort of down the middle of the field, and the guys are both there, and it just, you have to trust your receiver to go make a play. It feels like that's what Ohio State's going to have to do. C.J. Stroud is going to have to be willing to throw an interception or 2 if they're going to score points in this game.
6 different LSU receivers had a catch of at least 20 yards in this game. And that was from two different LSU quarterbacks. I guess my first actual point here, Tom, remember a few weeks back or a few games back when I said if Keely Ringo was an Ohio State Buckeye, Buckeye fans would absolutely hate him. This game exemplified that. He had one really good play in the end zone. He followed the ball. It was a fade pass, and he played the ball and he tipped it away. And like he turned around and was watching it the entire time. Everything else, I don't know. Like I don't know if some of these were. There was one maybe that was a cover 2 issue where he didn't get deep enough and the safety didn't get over in time. He had a pass interference. He gave up a bunch of catches, and he was just getting beat. Him and Malachi Starks both were getting beat deep when they shouldn't have been. And, I don't know if this is a concentration issue. I was on with Mark Rogers, and he had a Georgia writer on, and Georgia writer was saying, like, the coaches have been getting after Keely Ringo. They think he's too heavy. He needs to drop some weight to be quicker and faster. And he's not consistent right now in this game. And I don't know how much of that is a product of being up 35-7. I think there was some of that, but it wasn't 35-7 when he started getting beat. And so, and it's been happening. This is not a new thing either. So I think if, I said it on a show the other day, at some point you just send Jaden Ballard, somebody in there just against Keely Ringo, and just run straight and we'll throw it to you. And we'll see if Keely Ringo can stay with you.
And Julian Fleming, when we talked to him a couple weeks ago, he talked about the fact that he knew Keely Ringo. They knew each other a little bit from recruiting, and they'd been going to a lot of the same schools. So it'll be interesting to see, is Jaden Ballard that guy? We have seen Jaden Ballard be that guy. I'm sorry, Julian Fleming be that guy against Iowa, where you run in a straight line and we'll throw you the ball downfield. It has to be someone, and I don't know. We'll see. It feels to me like it is more likely to be Emeka Ibuka or Julian Fleming than it is to be Marvin Harrison, because I think Marvin Harrison is going to have so much attention on him that some of those other guys are going to have single coverage. You can't bracket everyone, and if you do, you're going to have about 3 guys within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, so it should be relatively easy to run. So I don't think that's going to be their game plan. So Ohio State has a depth of wide receivers that other teams don't necessarily have, and that feels like that's going to be the thing that they've got to lean on, because boy, running the ball against Georgia doesn't look like a whole lot of fun to me. There was at one point in the first half, I think LSU got a 40-yard rush or something like that right before the half, but there was a point during the first half where the rushing yardage total was 150-6, which was like, that doesn't feel like a number you're going to win with if you're getting minus 144 rushing yards in the first half and also giving up a bunch of passing yards. And that is, in fact, how the game played out. The team that was down 150-6 was down 35-7, which feels about right. And, you watch teams try and run against Georgia, and it's like, well, 3 yards here, 4 yards here. And it's like, I know you have to kind of keep doing that. You can't actually be one-dimensional. You have to be okay with the fact that you're just going to get 3 or 4 yards. And that means you need to have a 2nd and 7 play call ready. And, I know Ryan Day is a big fan of, just kind of keep pounding at the rock and eventually it'll break. And yeah, maybe. And we have seen teams bust long runs against Georgia, but this was another one where it was just like the Missouri run, where there's a long run ball. It's a long run, and then he gets tackled before he scores. And I think on this one, this was a drive that LSU did end up scoring a touchdown on. I think it might have been, but that's just, you're not going to be able to consistently run the ball against Georgia. You probably have to try to a certain degree, but if you're going to score, you're probably going to do it through the air more than on the ground.
That long run by Josh Williams was 47 yards. Do you know how many yards LSU rushed for on the day, Tom?
Was it like 50?
47 yards.
47 yards. All right. Well, good news. They had the one big one and they didn't lose any. And, the rest of the day was kind of a wash. So I guess that's good news? ?
Their other 19 carries went for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That feels like one of these things where you look at Georgia tackling on the outside, and you look at Georgia tackling in the running game, and it just feels like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to throw the ball downfield a little bit more. And I talked at one point earlier this year about the fact that I didn't think Tennessee was a great matchup for Michigan if they end up playing in the playoff. I don't think Georgia's a great matchup for Michigan either. I know we just saw J.J. McCarthy throw a bunch of balls downfield. I don't know that Georgia's going to be a great matchup for Michigan if they play. And you conducted a poll last week, and a bunch of Michigan fans are rooting for Ohio State. So I think Michigan fans may be up to speed with that as well.
The run defense takes me to my next one. There was a 4th and 1 shotgun situation down by around the 5-yard line for LSU. They had 4th and 1. They go shotgun. Jalen Carter throws the right tackle into the backfield, basically stops the play, just like blasts him. One arm, destroys the play, no gain or a loss of a yard, whatever. The going shotgun on 4th and 1 rather than sneaking. I understand this is Georgia's defensive line, but defensive linemen would much rather have you in the shotgun than getting ready for a sneak. And so you're just playing into Georgia's hands there. But then they stop that, and then they march right down the field for like a 95-yard touchdown. Yeah, 8 plays, 95 yards in 4 minutes in the third quarter to basically put another nail in the coffin, because there was a portion of the game where LSU was coming back. Like, it wasn't necessarily, Georgia wasn't in danger, but what was 35-7 was on the verge of becoming like 35-24. And, at that point, anything can happen, but Georgia shut that down, and then they went right down the field, easy touchdown, ended any hopes for LSU at that point. But we see it a lot at Ohio State, the 4th and 1 shotgun, and we see it all over the country. I don't know if it was the thing that Urban Meyer always said, well, we don't practice snapping the ball under center, so that's why we have to do it out of shotgun. But of course, they had J.T. Barrett and the quarterback power, which was almost undefeated, and you can maybe understand that. But going a shotgun against Georgia's defensive line, when they know you're running it, it just feels like a losing proposition.
Yeah, it just feels like you're going to have to use some misdirection. You're going to have to use some, play action there. You're going to have to Michigan ran a jump pass against Ohio State in that kind of situation. You've got to do something like that just to mix things up a little bit. Because if they know you're coming, and we saw Georgia had a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 down in the red zone where they got stuff. They couldn't run the ball in short yardage either. That's just, if the other team knows you're doing it and you need to move them a yard, it's not that easy to move people a yard. That is kind of the nature of football. So sometimes you got to, do the old wee willie keeler, hit them where they ain't. You got to run it or throw it where they ain't. I think that's something that Ohio State's going to have to do. Run a little quick slant to Marvin Harrison. Run something. Run a little misdirection. Get away from your tendencies. Line up in pistol, which you've been super run heavy out of, and throw out of it. You're going to have to do that kind of stuff in short yardage. And, again, we will see how Ohio State does with that. But that sequence you were talking about there was really, that was the end of the game, basically, where it was 38-17, I think, and LSU had scored a touchdown. It's like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to be a little bit interesting here. And they get down there, they get stopped on the, at whatever, 4th and 1 at the 5. And Georgia is backed way up, still a bunch of momentum on the LSU side. And Gary Danielson's talking about the fact, oh boy, they really need a first down here. And they just throw this little slip screen to Rosemary Jack Saint, and picked up a 3rd, and they're throwing it 5 yards behind the line, right behind the line of scrimmage on a 3rd and 6, and he just kind of like wiggles his way and converts it, and then 2 plays later, boom, they're in the red zone because Kendall Milton had a long run, and they just make it look so easy. It really is. It's really amazing. One thing that I had in my notes is, boy, Georgia's corners like to play physical, and they are going to challenge you. Basically they can't call them all. Like you're gonna that is how they are going to play. Their corners are going to be very physical, and sometimes the one that was the interception off the helmet, like I watched it 3 or 4 times, and I think he might have gotten there a little early, but it didn't get called. Just hit right as the ball's getting there. Ringo got flagged for pass interference in the end zone at one point, but they are not going to call them all. That is just the officials don't want to control the game, so Georgia is going to take advantage of that and be as physical as they can with the wide receivers. So, I think Ohio State fans need to get accustomed to the fact that you are going to be really annoyed at some no calls in this game, because that is how Georgia seems to play, and I don't expect that to change when they're playing against better receivers.
Yeah, Kamari Lassiter got away with one as well. He got beat, and then when he was catching up, he was all over his man, and the refs are like, that's the SEC, baby. This is how we do it here. So yeah, just get used to that, because we saw plays that were always flags against the Buckeyes this year, and Georgia was not getting flagged for that. So maybe that's a good sign for Ohio State, but it's not going to be the same refs in the Peach Bowl that you saw in the SEC championship game.
Did you see, Tony, who is going to be calling the game? Which conference's officials are going there?
Is it ACC?
Oh, even better than that. Tony, who are college football's agents of chaos?
Is it the Pac-12?
Pac-12 refs, yes. Sadly, Glass's ref has retired, but yeah, the conference that brought you, we're just going to stop the clock in the middle of the play on this interception return. And how many downs? 4, 3, 5. Who's to say? Yes, the conference that has brought you all of those debacles this year will be calling the Peach Bowl. I'm sure it's going to go fine, Tony. We have seen Ohio State play in plenty of college football playoff semifinals that did not feature crazy, ridiculous, game-changing penalties or replay calls. So I'm sure, Tony, it's going to go fine.
The replay officials, though, at least they're professionals, right?
Yes. So I'm just going to have you Google Pac-12 replay officials real quick. Listen, they're going to send their best, Tony. I'm sure it'll be great.
I don't know about that, Tom. Let me go to my next one here. And really, these are the last few that I have. There was a swing pass to Kenny McIntosh that I really, really liked, and that I'm sure the LSU defensive back did not. Because on this swing pass, Darnell Washington leaks out as a lead blocker, and the corner defensive, whoever it was, safety corner, ends up getting flagged for taking out Darnell Washington below the waist. And he hits him like right at the waist, trying to take on the blocker so that somebody else can take on the tackler. The poor guy, Darnell Washington, 6'7", 260, 270 pounds. The guy is doing his best. And the ref is like, this is block below the waist. That's 15 yards. And you look at the defensive back and you look at Darnell Washington and you're like, how is he supposed to block him above the waist? In order to block him above the waist, he would have to launch, and then you have targeting. So really, the only thing you could do, I guess, just stand there and get run over, because that was going to happen.
Yeah, that was, you can take a penalty or you can get turned into a grease spot. And he made his choice, and that's fine. Yeah, I especially liked Stetson Bennett getting called for a block below the waist on the fumble, and the fumble was going to be my next one, where Georgia continues to put the ball on the ground. And, we talked about how Georgia takes advantage of all these bounces, and, they have the athlete to take advantage of these bounces. If Georgia puts the ball on the ground twice, Ohio State needs to get it once and really probably twice. I mean, you have to take advantage of their mistakes. They're not perfect, but they also don't make that many mistakes. They don't do that many stupid things. And, we have seen now twice. There was the one, the one that you mentioned earlier that I don't remember which back it was, but someone put it on the ground and after they got hit. And then this is at least the second time we've seen just an exchange problem where they're running a zone read or something, and just the ball just pops out. And LSU took advantage of that one, but you've got to take advantage of that. I think the Tennessee game was the other time we saw that. And that was one where Georgia puts the ball on the ground and Tennessee on I think a zone read exchange, and Tennessee ends up kicking a field goal out of it. If you get a short field, you have to get 7 points out of it. You have to recover those fumbles. You have to get 7 points off of those. If Ohio State has 14 points off of turnovers, I think Ohio State has a pretty decent chance to win this game. If Ohio State has 0 points off turnovers, I think that's probably not going to go great. So we'll see how that one goes. They also, Georgia, on the positive side for Georgia, they ran one of my absolute favorite looks. And this was not how the play was designed to go. This was not the first read. But they ran the fake end around to Arian Smith. and then they end up throwing the ball to him anyway. So you've like double psyched out the defense where it's like, oh, he's got the ball. No, he doesn't. Wait. Yes, he does. Like, that's just, they talk about jerk routes in football where you are just running a play specifically to make one specific guy look like an idiot. That's like one of my favorite variations of the jerk route where it's like, whoever it is, you fake the end around to the guy and then you throw it to him anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you on those fumbles where just easy fumbles. It's bizarre that you have this team that is so sound and then just randomly, and I guess maybe we shouldn't call them sound because there'll be some inexplicable throws from Stetson Bennett a couple of times a game. But I think that's maybe that's any quarterback. One of the plays that I really did like was the pick play for Brock Bowers for a touchdown. It was like maybe 8 or 10 yards, but he's lined up at tight end, obviously, and then basically just runs. He just runs for the corner for the pylon. He's got 2 receivers outside of him, and they both run slants, and they're running inside. And neither one of them, because we see so often where guys run blatant picks. Like, these guys did not. They just run their route, getting away, something that you can't call. And it slowed the guys up, the defense up just enough, because Brock Bowers is a good enough athlete. You don't need to free him by 4 yards. You only need to free him by a half of a yard, that sort of thing, and then he'll get to the corner. I was really impressed by the way they ran that. The guys never, they weren't looking for a defender. They were just running their route because the whole wash thing it slowed them down enough. They knew it would work. They did it, and it's just really, really smart. Other teams are so bad with it, and sometimes it still won't get called, but they're in a situation where, we are not going to get this called because these guys are running routes, and they just happen to be going the same place where a defender is trying to get through. Sorry, that's the way the play is designed. Brock Bowers just gets enough of a rub to get into the end zone, and I just really thought that was a well-run play.
Yeah, that was a good one, and when, like you said, he doesn't need to be open by that much to catch a touchdown, and he wasn't open by that much to catch a touchdown. But that's a short enough play. You're in a small enough portion of the field that Stetson Bennett can put that right on the money, and so yeah, you have a very tight window there that you can take advantage of. Let's see. I had just a couple more. One is, we need to talk about the middle 8 because I'm at the point now where it feels like every single game we watch, Georgia has the ball and is driving for points at the end of the first half, and then Georgia also has the ball at the start of the second half, and they're always like a plus 10 in that exchange or a plus 14 in that exchange. It just feels like Georgia does such a good job with that middle 8, and I've talked about how Kirby's fairly conservative with things, and they're not, they don't want to have the other team get the ball back and have a chance to score, and they had the ball with enough time on the clock that LSU did get the ball back and had a chance to get 3 points, but Georgia went down and got a touchdown. And so Georgia still was a plus in the middle 8 there, where they were still kind of conservative, just run a little wide receiver screen, run a counter, another wide receiver screen, but all 3 of them went for big plays. Like, they're not throwing the ball downfield. They were still pretty conservative, but it was just, a bunch of 3-yard throws or just, run a little counter, and it kept turning into 15, 18, 20-yard plays, and all of a sudden, boom, you're down the field, where I think they probably would have liked to milk the clock before the end of the half, but just the way Georgia manages that middle 8, that feels like, if Ohio State wins the toss, I think Ohio State's going to be inclined to decline or to defer to the second half anyway, but, that just feels like the way the timing keeps lining up for Georgia. It feels like if Ohio State loses that toss and Georgia has the opportunity to kind of dominate that middle 8 the way they have, that in and of itself could be something that decides the game, in a game that could be as close as this is.
It's funny to think how important winning the toss is, because it almost feels like for Ohio State, if they lose the toss, that first drive is just going to be a wash, because I think the excitement, the energy level will be so high that it's going to be hard to execute for them and dealing with everything going on. So I think obviously they would prefer to go on defense and kind of ease into things. But hey, Ryan Day's talking about they're going to come out swinging. If he means it, maybe there'd be no bigger sign than if the Ohio State wins the toss and they're like, we want the ball. Do I expect that to happen? No, I do not. But that would be a clear sign, a clear indication, Tom, that he's going to follow his own advice. Foolishly, perhaps, but he's following it. One of my others, Tom, I have, LSU had time to throw the ball, and they threw it a lot. They ended up averaging more yards per play than Georgia did, more yards in the game than Georgia did, but they had time to throw the ball down the field, and I think that's something that maybe Georgia can't afford to. I know it's something that they can't afford to do against Ohio State. So does that mean they blitz more, they do more to get CJ Stroud off of his timing? Because if you're just going to rush 4 and not get there, if you want to drop 7 and try to keep everything in front of you, that's fine. LSU was dinking and dunking in this one early on until they didn't have to anymore, and they just started going deep because the stuff was open. Against Tennessee, there's some dinking and dunking until stuff starts breaking open. And it's almost like Georgia can only, offenses have to remain patient, and then eventually they get impatient. I don't know if Georgia's defense kind of gets impatient at some point. Like, we're tired of just staying back and keeping stuff in front of us. Let's make some plays and then shoot, somebody just got behind me, that sort of thing. So I don't know if you want to give Ohio State the kind of time that you were giving Tennessee and LSU. And we know CJ Stroud has had issues when faced with pressure, that sort of thing. So maybe you try to get him off of his timing there. But if you're just going to rush 4 or not get that 5th guy there, and if you want to just drop 7 or keep guys back, and I think you've got to, you're going to give up some yards, and then you've just got to hold on in the red zone. I guess that would be the final thing there.
Yeah, and the red zone is going to be one of the big stories, because if Ohio State's kicking field goals in the red zone or going for it on 4th down in the red zone, I feel like they're going to be able to move the ball between the 20s to a certain degree. I think if they're in the red zone, Georgia has been so good in the red zone. They're, I think, 31% touchdown, something like that, and allowed in the red zone, which is slightly worse than last year's defense, which was one of the all-time great defenses. So, yeah, they're trending downward, so I guess that's good news for Ohio State. Not downward fast enough that it's going to be a difference in the Peach Bowl, probably, but it's I think Ohio State's going to have to hit big plays, because I don't know that they're going to be able to consistently do it in the red zone. That is a very tall ask to be able to go 4 for 4 touchdowns, 5 for 5 touchdowns in the red zone, something like that, because Georgia's defense is just so good down there. The last thing that I had was, I think we are sort of gotten up to speed on which Georgia guys have been missing this year, and we hit guys we haven't seen a lot during the course of the year suddenly start showing up. A.D. Mitchell back for this one after a long ankle injury. He didn't actually catch a pass, but you could see him getting involved in the offense a little bit, and with another month of rest, I'm going to guess he's going to be involved in the playoff game as well. He caught touchdowns in both of last year's CFP games. He had 65 yards and a touchdown against Oregon, and then got hurt against Samford in week 2 and more or less missed the rest of the regular season. Showed up again for the SEC championship game. That's a name that you have not heard us talk about a whole lot on these shows, and that's why he's been out the whole season. But that feels like a name that Georgia has so many weapons on offense that I don't know that any one of these guys is going to go off for 180 yards and 3 touchdowns or anything like that. But if he is one of 3 or 4 guys who has 52 yards and 1 touchdown, well, that adds up to.
Yeah, Mitchell, 6'4" receiver as a true freshman last year, 29 catches, 426 yards, and 4 touchdowns. They thought he was going to be the guy this year to take over as that number 1 wide receiver. And so that's definitely somebody Ohio State fans will need to watch out for. Number 5 in your program. LSU had 150 yards passing basically in the first quarter. That's something that is, take note of that. Although, they had 2 consecutive drives, so that will help when you don't have to go on defense at all. What else do I have here? Kendall Milton reminds me of Trey Sermon. That's who finally figured out who kind of reminds me of. Like, he's not super elusive. He just got enough wiggle to make it work, and he's kind of a bigger guy. I really like the way the Georgia offense feeds off of the defense. When they create a turnover, they create a stop. The offense is like, boom, our turn. We'll take care of this. We got this. Throw a touchdown after the interception. Get that fourth down stop at the 5, go 95 yards. It's all just working in unison with each other. It's all part of the same being type of thing. It's not offense and defense. It's just Georgia. And they work really, really well together. And just impressed by that. And then also a couple times when I say Arizona State because of Jaden Daniels, the quarterback. Actually, I had written down Arizona State a couple of times rather than LSU here. Like they're mostly in the shotgun, but then they would go into the pistol, and it's like Georgia's defense would be like, okay, here comes the run, let's all move around, and then LSU would be like, crap, we can't run the ball. Back into the shotgun, everybody. And so it's just interesting to watch that defense work and recognize and then adjust on the fly.
And, as I was watching that game, I thought, this feels like exactly what Georgia TCU would have looked like, where the opponent has not enough depth, gets worn down on the line of scrimmage, and the magic quarterback running around and making crazy plays, or two magic quarterbacks in LSU's case. It only gets you so far, and then the magic stops working, and then you're in trouble because you can't handle the stuff in the trenches because you just get worn down. That feels like exactly the CFP semifinal that we would have seen if the committee had seeded teams by quality instead of avoiding rematches or whatever they were doing there. So yeah, if you were wondering why Georgia fans may be a little salty about how that seeding went out, I think it's because they have already seen this, what that semifinal game would look like in that very stadium during the month of December, and they seem to enjoy how it played out the first time, and I'm sure they would have liked to have it play out that way the second time too.
So there we have it. I found this very informative to actually watch the games before talking about the opponent. I don't know if I will continue this next year because I don't know if I need to watch 5 games for every opponent. But when you've got a month to do it, I think it's very informative. I wouldn't say fulfilling, but, bordering on fulfilling to have this new knowledge about the Georgia Bulldogs. I think, if Ohio State wins and Michigan wins, do we need to go watch 5 Michigan games this year?
I think we've already done that. I think we've watched. All 13 Michigan games. So we can why don't we just rerun? If you haven't seen it, it's new to you. Like, hey, we'll just Radiolab has been doing that a bunch recently. It's a Buckeye Weekly Classic. Here's us talking about the first Michigan game of the season. Here you go.
And don't worry, we would not run the Michigan Monday following the Ohio State loss. We would not, or even the post game show. We would not do that to you. So don't worry about that.
That's the only one we haven't done. Well, we didn't do that one, and we didn't do the Purdue game. So actually, we probably would have to. So you have that to look forward to.
Do you? Anyway, that will do it for us. I want to thank you all for joining us. You can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Say hello to us there. On the message board, you can find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Also, check out our new YouTube channel, CFB Playbook. You can find that at youtube.com/@CFB Playbook. Going to be a ton of national college football stuff there for all of you. So check that out. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll be notified when we drop more videos there. But there's a lot of stuff coming to that channel that we're excited about. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys later.